We need to give companies clarity and confidence in their investments, in their products, in their packaging decisions. And we want to support stronger governments and PROs also in emerging and developing markets with knowledge, expertise, and connections. And building partnerships across the value chain from raw materials to recyclers and also to the secondary recycled materials markets.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Packaging Europe podcast. My name is Elisabeth Skoga and I'll be your host today. So earlier this year, the former Alliance for Beverage, Cartons and the Environment, ACE, and Extract merged to form the Food and Beverage Carton Alliance. And the aim of the merger was to provide a uniform platform to advance food and beverage cartons and to promote their circularity benefits. And this summer, the Alliance announced the appointment of Sebastian Bartels as its new Director General. And he joins FBCA at a time where the Alliance has plans to expand beyond Europe and has some other exciting plans as well that we're going to obviously talk about today. So I'm very pleased to welcome Sebastian to the podcast today to talk about the role of beverage cartons in packaging sustainability and the work the Alliance does, such as certifications and issuing guidelines and also future plans for the association. So, welcome, Sebastian. It's great to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, hello, Elisabeth, and thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure.
You're very welcome. To get us started and to set the scene, could you briefly introduce yourself and also maybe tell us a bit more about your background, what you did before you became Director General at FBCA?
Yes, of course, with pleasure. To give some context, my professional background is in environmental and safety engineering. You would probably call it today sustainability or sustainable business, but back then when I studied that was not the terminology that was used. But 20 years ago, it was more about compliance focus. And today, fast forward, it's actually circularity. It's about sustainable business, operational, but also organizational reliability, a product focus, and so on. So that's my background. For me, it was always paired with business cases, making sustainability work and practice, because only if you consider like P&L, profit and loss aspects to it, that was for me always the winning aspects if you want to change something in the area of sustainability. And I was lucky to have worked across industries worldwide in mining and chemicals and manufacturing, production, packaging or logistics, even aviation and space, the full supply chain from sourcing to distribution. And most recently, I led global sustainability services, the portfolio of leading testing, inspection, certification, consulting and training company. And we supported their companies worldwide, translating their own goals into measurable action, but embedded into their own business. And for me, this is nothing special. It's about understanding how industries and societies actually work and how to make them change happen. And to make circularity and sustainability reality, it must be, in my opinion, always paired to the DNA of a company or of an organization. And it must be integrated also into daily decisions, from investments to procurement and product design. So this is my background. This is what I bring into this role. And now I'm proud to be representing the global voice of the food and beverage carton industry, or FBCA. And it's an industry which is really close to people's daily life and showing how renewable circular packaging actually already exists and is a work in practice.
Yes, it sounds like it's going to be a very rewarding role for you. And on that note, I wanted to ask you, what are you most looking forward to in your new role, and what are you most looking forward to getting stuck into?
Yeah, I'm excited because it's something very real and tangible. It's everyone interacts with packaging daily, but this is one. It's a packaging solution that everyone has at home. I don't know anyone who does not have a food or beverage carton in their kitchen or in their fridge. As an example, on the breakfast table, or when you prepare pizza, you have the tomato sauce in it, or at your favorite coffee shop, the barista might use your milk from these cartons. So they are really in everyone's life. And this is something that I found very touching and also exciting. And it's not about the packaging itself, of course. It's about safe food. It's about long shelf life. It's about less waste. It's about circular systems that work in practice. And fiber or wood fiber is actually a renewable material that is given to us by nature. We are looking for these technologies since many years, and in this packaging area, it is used since many, many years successfully. And it's providing us with a sustainable base we can continuously optimize, but it is in use. It's really working. And this is fantastic. And this is making beverage cartons already among the most circular and low carbon packaging solutions on the market. And the goal is, of course, to help, for me, the personal goal is to help ensure this is recognized by policymakers, by regulators, by markets, and also consumers around the world. And I also like a lot collaboration, because sustainability is all about collaboration. It doesn't work if only a single company or a single actor tries to change something. And what we're also doing as FBCA is connecting companies, it's connecting with recyclers, with policymakers, and every stakeholder that is relevant to make it circular within this ecosystem. And I also want to highlight that we will support emerging markets, emerging and developing markets. We will help governments and PROs, the packaging recovery organizations, to build circular systems that enhance actually food security and food supply. But ultimately, it's about turning potential into visible, real-world impact that benefits everyday's life of people in the world.
You've already mentioned a few of the benefits of cartons for food and beverages compared to maybe other packaging materials, but I thought it might be nice to go a bit more in detail there with some examples.
Yes. So let's maybe have a look at some data and some facts, a little bit of background information. We are talking about roughly 250 billion food and beverage cartons, which are put on the market globally every year. This is a huge number. So that's supporting, of course, that it's touching everyone's daily life. And just in Europe, we are talking about around 45 billion food and beverage cartons on the market every year. And already today, we have around 75% of milk and 60% of the juice sold in Europe is actually packed in a beverage carton. And why is it so interesting? Why is it so good? Because the composition and the light-weighted structure allows easy transport, easy storage, but also a very important factor is that the long shelf life of 6 months or even more, and this without cooling, is really attractive to be chosen by those who will or do put food and beverages, liquid, of course, on the market. And it protects the food. It also protects them from degradation. It's preserving the qualities like the flavor or the nutrients, and this without the preservatives. So this is really interesting as a solution. And it helps then the companies, the brands, the ones who are distributing food and beverage, that helps them to also have a very sustainable approach, have low emissions because they need less energy, for example, for the storage. They don't need to put it into the cooling all the time. And this is really interesting. And this is now, if we look at Europe, for example, but also when we look at those areas, those regions, the territories where we see the population growth nowadays, it's the emerging and developing countries. And here it's about the changing demand of the consumers. So here we are now talking about a growing middle class in countries where there was not the same infrastructure, or is not the same infrastructure existing. And here these food and beverage cartons offers solutions to the industries, to the communities, to serve the growing middle classes, for example, which is also, again, the same argument as I mentioned. It's very interesting for those there. But of course, you need to do it in a circular way. So you need to always have the recycling, the collection, sorting, and recycling in mind. And this brings it to a very high packaging efficiency especially for milk and juice, where it's the core application of food and beverage cartons. And it's leading to lower emissions, better footprints, ecological footprints, and that's helping the industries to achieve their own sustainable goals. And now looking at the collection, sorting, and recycling part, so the downstream after the use, it's, I believe, also very important and interesting to learn that food and beverage cartons are in fact recycled at scale. In Europe, there are around 25 specialized recycling plants if you include the polyol fraction recycling. That's a lot, and only in Europe, the industry has already invested over 200 million euros and is planning to invest more, around 120, 150 million euros, to support the recycling of all these components of the cartons.
Relating to that, obviously, you talked about the sustainability benefits of cartons, and in Europe in particular, the PPWR obviously being enforced with quite stringent regulations. What roles can cartons play there to help companies fulfill regulatory requirements?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. PPWR is still an ongoing topic. As we know, it's a top priority for the industries, for the regulators, everyone involved in packaging and the life cycle. And if we just now focus on Europe, where food and beverage cartons have an average 75% material share of fiber, so of, in this case, then the wood-based fiber, and they're recyclable by definition and renewable. And the fibers used to produce these food and beverage cartons come from sustainably managed forests, and they are certified by independent third-party and recognized international certification bodies. So this is very important, I believe, in the context of PPWR, as it has the whole life cycle in mind of the packaging. And there are different life cycle analyses, or LCAs, as the experts say, out there, which actually show that food and beverage cartons have the lowest carbon footprint in their core categories, like for milk and juice. So therefore, companies who are choosing food and beverage cartons to pack their perishable foods, for example, in food and beverage cartons, choose already a sustainable and low carbon circular packaging solution. But the PPWR actually defines recyclability a bit broader, but also a bit specific in a way that it's about the compatibility with the management and the processing of waste by design, based on separate collection, sorting, and separate streams, recycling at scale, and then the use of recycled materials to replace primary raw materials. So this is the definition of the PPWR in a nutshell, shortened. I simplified it now a bit, but that's how it is. And in this regard, we as industry have reacted and have provided here the industry with recycling guidelines, designed for recycling guidelines, where the producers are able to assess and map their own products with the PPWR requirements. And then they can design their own products accordingly to ensure that they will be, when it comes to these aspects, of course, that they are in compliance with the regulation requirements. The RECI check, on the other hand, is then the certification after the design, after the product has been designed. A RECI check is then the certification side for each and every packaging type. To confirm that it is actually following these design guidelines and it will be not, for example, rejected by the recycling stream operators or the recycling facilities, for example. The protocol is provided by FBCA. It was an industry-driven initiative. It is an industry-driven initiative, which is still ongoing. We are currently checking for required updates, etc. So this is something that will stay and is in alignment with PPWR requirements. And of course, as I mentioned, in case secondary legislation, delegated acts will now make any changes, we would then adjust the design for recyclability guideline, but also the RECI check to ensure that it's helping to have compliant products on the market. Yeah, when combined with sustainable renewable sourcing, the recycling then reduces the overall footprint of products, and this is then closing the loop And what I wanted to mention is then, of course, that we have a challenge that not everything that is put on the market is being collected at the moment. So we can only recycle what is collected. So we have designed for recycling guidelines. However, in the European context, we do not have these binding national collection targets. So here we have some gap to close in order to really have all these products in the recycling loop.
I wanted to delve a bit deeper. Obviously, you mentioned the ResiCheck certification and the design for recycling guidelines. What is the significance of such protocols and guidelines in the context of boosting sustainability?
Yes, the design for recycling guidelines, they actually map the compatibility level of each component of packaging with recycling. You know that these packaging materials, they have a mix. It's very well designed. It is today necessary that you combine different layers, a material mix, and these guidelines help to map compatibility for each of these components. The compatibility aspects have been expanded, and the recent update, for example, to include topics around the sorting with near field infrared technologies, or with the requirements regarding fiber recovery in specialized paper mills, or aspects around the polyol recycling, polyol standing for polymer aluminum mix recycling. And this has been brought to the latest standards. And then these guidelines help the manufacturers to make, in the end, better design choices. So very early in their own processes, and that helps also the packaging recovery organizations, or the PROs, to assess then recyclability more consistently. So you know that the PROs are actually checking on packagings they see on the market, whether, from their opinion, with the given recycling technologies and standards, from their opinion, it is actually recyclable or not. And as mentioned, the ResiCheck protocol supports the PPWO requirements, and is directly linked to the design for recycling guidelines. And with this, it provides also an independent or neutral standardized recyclability assessment for all the fiber-based composite packagings in this area. So it's not just the food and beverage cartons. You can also use it for similar packagings, which are alike the liquid packaging cartons we are using. When designing or changing a packaging, companies can also use the guidelines to validate their performance in the recycling stream. And what is also interesting and important, I believe, is that this is a harmonized assessment and check, which is recognized all over Europe. And we tried to have an approach here that you do not have multiple different solutions, multiple different approaches for assessments of recyclability in the market, but that an industry is aligning on this is one type, one sort, one methodology, recognized by everyone, known to everyone, made transparent and based on facts and figures that are also transparent to everyone. And this reduces uncertainty and speeds up innovation. That's what we are really believing in, because it will also reduce bureaucracy and discussions in which standards have been applied. If someone maybe does not accept the standard, then they have to redo it. So here we have something that is accepted by the stakeholders in the whole life cycle. As a result, both Guideline and ResiCheck help companies to maintain their market access. They reduce compliance risks, and they lead the transition to the circular packaging. And also recyclers benefit from it, because they have in the end a managed and controlled feedstock for their own recycling processes.
And I wanted to go back to the merger for a short time as well, and asked you, obviously, FBCA was founded through a merger of the Alliance for Beverage Cartons and Extract. And I was just curious to find out what prompted the merger and what advantages you anticipate from it.
Yeah, the merger was driven by some very important thoughts and ambitions. The industry recognized that the packaging must be viewed across the full life cycle. So from the sustainable sourcing, then that's the upstream, then even downstream after the use of the beverage carton, to the collection, sorting, recycling, but even then what happens with the secondary the recycled materials and their market demand. And it was clear that we needed a unified platform that connects all these stages under one roof and that allows conversations, discussions, standardization, positioning among the different stakeholders along the life cycle and in this ecosystem. ACE is the one, and Extract is the other unit that have been merged to form the new FBCA organization, and they complemented each other perfectly. And this joining of the forces made total sense. However, now one strong global voice is representing the entire value chain, and the legacy associations were focusing on the EU. We have now a global scope. We are growing this step by step. And we are also then looking at all of the different stakeholders along the life cycle, which were in the past not in the direct scope of the two legacy associations. This was supposed to enable a consistent message also towards policymakers, other stakeholders and partners, and the public. And it will improve efficiency and alignment for everyone who is interacting with the food and beverage carton industry and the sector. And we also want to make a point that we argue, we position fact-based and reflect on how the whole system actually works in practice. And this is good to have it then out of one source with one voice all over the world. We use data the same way, we can make it transparent, etc. And ultimately, we position FBCA to drive circularity at scale, not just in Europe, but globally, with, for example, emerging markets or other industrialized territories where circularity is getting traction.
You mentioned that you wanted to widen your scope to work more globally. Have you taken some first steps there already? And what are the aims there for the coming months?
Yes. That's a very good question. We have, of course, a roadmap ahead of us, and we started already. What is clear is that we want and need to strengthen the global recognition of fiber-based renewable packaging as a circular solution. It is already well known, but there is always room for improvement. We want to make this position more clear, more known to those who do policy, to take decisions, who decide on investments, etc. We also want to advance in recycling at scale. Help to achieve the EU level targets. For example, the 55% recycling at scale by 2035. We also want to promote that design for recycling makes total sense, on that RECI check makes also total sense. So these are topics that we want and need to promote further. We need to give companies clarity and confidence in their investments, in their products, in their packaging decisions. And we want to support stronger governments and PROs, also in emerging and developing markets, with knowledge, expertise, and connections. And building partnerships across the value chain, from raw materials to recyclers and also to the secondary recycled materials markets, because here we believe that currently the situation that secondary materials have a disadvantage compared to the virgin materials. So that we need to find with the policymakers incentives to stimulate the demand on secondary materials. And we want to also show that packaging is actually not the problem, but it's part of the solution, especially for food security or perishable foods, climate goals, and circularity. And that's, I think, it's a very positive positioning, and we can be proud of that. It's really good. And we want to keep the industry's focus global, inclusive, and also looking that we really then do the real life impact we seek for.
I think that seems like a great note to end this podcast on, a very optimistic and forward-looking note. So, that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Sebastian, for being on the podcast today and for sharing your insights. And obviously we'll stay in touch with FBCA and keep our audience in the loop with any latest developments as well.
Yes. Thank you again, Elisabeth, for the invitation to this podcast. And I hope that it will give the audience some insights. And of course, we stay in touch and we are here to discuss further.
And thank you to our listeners as well for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you might be listening on, so you don't miss out on any of the latest episodes. Thank you very much.